Champagne, miss? I blinked, tearing my eyes away from the stage. A waiter stood before me, holding a silver tray. No, I whispered, my voice barely audible over the swelling orchestra music. No, thank you. Are you all right? You look a bit pale. I'm fine, I lied. Just waiting for the announcement. The waiter nodded and vanished into the crowd, leaving me alone in the shadows of the massive ballroom. I gripped the stem of my full glass so tightly I thought the crystal might snap. Look at him, a woman in a red silk dress whispered to her companion just a few feet away. She didn't know I was there. No one knew I was there. Julian looks like a king tonight. And look who you brought, the companion replied, leaning in with a conspiratorial grin. Sienna, I saw her in Vogue last week. She just got back from Paris. They look perfect together. Finally, a woman who actually fits his status. Fits his status. The words hit me like a physical slap. I shrank back further behind the velvet curtain, my heart hammering against my ribs. Ladies and gentlemen, a booming voice echoed from the speakers. The room went silent instantly. Julian stepped up to the microphone. He looked devastatingly handsome in his tuxedo, the harsh stage lights reflecting off his dark hair, but he wasn't alone. His large hand rested firmly, possessively on the waist of the woman beside him. Sienna, she was glowing, her smile practiced and dazzling. Thank you all for coming tonight, Julian said, his voice deep and steady. The same voice that had whispered to me in bed just this morning. This merger is not just about business. It represents a new era. He looked down at Sienna. She looked up at him with adoration that seemed too perfect to be real. I promised you all a surprise, Julian continued, scanning the crowd. I held my breath. Look at me, I begged silently. Look at the corner. Find me. His eyes swept over the room, passing right over my hiding spot without a flicker of recognition. I am proud to introduce the new face of our global brand, Julian announced. And perhaps something more. The crowd gasped, then erupted into applause. Did you hear that? The woman in red squealed. Something more? That's basically an engagement announcement. Lucky girl, her friend sighed. Imagine belonging to a man like that. I felt bile rise in my throat. I remembered his words from last night. Elara, you have to trust me, he had said, kissing my forehead. The industry is dangerous right now. If people know about us, they'll target you. I'm keeping us private for your safety. Just stay hidden a little longer. Safety. Was this safety? Watching him parade another woman around while I stood in the dark like a dirty secret? He loves her, a man near me muttered to his colleague. You can tell by the way he holds her. Julian never touches anyone. He touches me, I whispered to the empty air, tears stinging my eyes. But the words felt hollow. Suddenly, the applause died down as Julian stepped back to let photographers snap pictures. Sienna turned her head. She wasn't looking at the cameras, she was looking directly at me. It was impossible. I was in the shadows. But she locked eyes with me, her gaze piercing through the darkness. Her perfect smile shifted. It wasn't a smile for the press anymore. One corner of her mouth quirked up a smirk, a cold, venomous acknowledgement. I know you're there, her expression said. And I know you can't do a thing about it. My phone buzzed in my clutch. It was a text from Martha, our housekeeper. Martha, dinner is in the oven, dear. Did you tell him about your script? I know he'll be proud. I stared at the screen, my vision blurring. Martha was the only one who treated me like a person, not a ghost. She thought I was here to celebrate my career. She didn't know I was here to witness my own funeral. He's not proud, Martha, I whispered, thumbing the screen off. He's erasing me. On stage, Julian leaned down to whisper something in Sienna's ear. She laughed, tossing her head back, her hand landing casually on his chest. They are the golden couple, the woman in red said decisively. There's no doubt about it. I set my untouched glass on a nearby table with a trembling hand. The condensation was cold, but my face burned with humiliation. Excuse me, I said, pushing past the gossiping women. Watch it. The woman snapped, brushing off her sleeve. Some people have no manners. I'm sorry, I said, my voice cracking. I really shouldn't be here. Clearly, she scoffed, turning her back on me. I rushed toward the exit, the sound of applause rising again behind me. I had believed him. I had believed that my silence was the price of his love. I thought I was sacrificing my pride to save us. I reached the heavy double doors and pushed them open, the cool night air hitting my face. Stupid, I hissed to myself, wiping a tear before it could fall. You are so stupid, Elara. My silence hadn't saved us. It had only given him the space to replace me. The biometric lock beeped, signaling my entry into the penthouse. It usually felt like a sanctuary, high above the city noise. Tonight it felt like a cage. Julian? I called out, though I knew the answer. Silence greeted me. The panoramic windows showed the city lights, indifferent and cold. I sat on the edge of the velvet sofa, still in my dress, waiting. I waited until 1 in the morning, then 2, then 4. By 6, the sun began to bleed through the curtains. He hadn't come home. I pulled my phone from my clutch. My finger hovered over the screen before I unlocked it. I didn't have to search. It was everywhere. Julian Sterling and Sienna Vane, a night at the pier. The photos showed them entering the hotel. His hand was on the small of her back, protective, familiar. The same way he used to guide me through crowds before he decided I needed to be hidden. Okay, I whispered, the sound cracking in the empty room. Okay. The pain wasn't sharp. It was a heavy, crushing weight sitting squarely on my chest. I couldn't breathe. I walked into the massive walk-in closet. His suits were lined up on one side, impeccable and intimidating. My clothes were on the other. I won't do it, I told the empty room. I won't be the pathetic ex-girlfriend waiting for scraps. I reached for the top shelf and pulled down my old gray suitcase. It was scuffed, the zipper slightly stuck, a relic from my life before Julian. I started pulling things off hangers. Jeans, t-shirts, the sweaters I bought with my own paycheck. My hand brushed against a silk dress, a gift from him for our anniversary. I pulled my hand back as if it burned. Not that, I muttered. Only mine. Just what belongs to Elara. I moved to the jewelry box. The diamond earrings? No. The Cartier bracelet? No, I left them all. I only took the silver locket my grandmother gave me. My phone buzzed. I sat on the floor and answered. Elara? Chloe's voice was sharp. Please tell me you're not looking at the news. I saw it, Chloe. That absolute trash, she hissed. I'm coming over. I'm going to kill him. I don't care if he owns half the city. No, I said, wiping my eyes with the back of my hand. Don't come here. I'm leaving. Leaving? Like, for the day? For good. I'm packing now. Thank God. Chloe exhaled. I was terrified you were going to stay and listen to his excuses. You know he's going to say it's just business or PR strategy. I know. That's why I'm not waiting for him to explain. Do you have a place to go? Can I crash on your couch? Are you kidding? You can have my bed. I'll sleep in the tub if I have to. Just get out of there, Elara. Leave the key. I am. I'm taking nothing he gave me. Just my clothes and my laptop. Good girl. Don't let him buy your forgiveness this time. He can't afford it anymore, I said, my voice hardening. I'll be there in 20 minutes. Hurry, before he comes back. I hung up instead. I zipped the gray suitcase. It looked small in the middle of the luxurious room. I walked to the kitchen island and placed my platinum key card on the marble counter. It made a final decisive click. Goodbye, Julian, I whispered. I gripped the suitcase handle and turned toward the door. I took 1 step. Then 2. Beep. The electronic lock whirred. My heart stopped. The heavy door swung open. Julian stood there. He was still in his tuxedo, though the tie was undone and hanging loose around his neck. He looked exhausted, dark circles under his eyes, his hair slightly disheveled. He stepped inside, kicking the door shut behind him. He didn't look at me immediately. He rubbed his temples, letting out a long sigh. Elara, I know you're up. We need to. He froze. His eyes landed on the gray suitcase in my hand. Then they darted to the key card on the counter. Finally, they locked onto my face. The exhaustion vanished from his expression in a split second. It was replaced by a sharp, predatory focus. The air in the room dropped to freezing. Where are you going? He asked. His voice was low, dangerous, and completely devoid of warmth. I'm leaving, I said, trying to keep my voice steady. He took a slow step forward, blocking the only exit. Put the bag down, Elara. I'm leaving, Julian, I said. My voice was surprisingly steady, though my knuckles were white around the suitcase handle. Move. He didn't move. He stood like a statue in the center of the foyer, his tuxedo jacket discarded on the floor, his sleeves rolled up to reveal the Rolex I gave him for his birthday. Put the bag down, he repeated. His tone wasn't angry. It was bored, as if I were a child throwing a tantrum over a broken toy. We have a schedule today. I don't have time for this. A schedule? I laughed, a harsh, brittle sound that hurt my throat. Does that schedule include a photo op with Sienna? Or maybe breakfast in bed with her at the pier? His jaw tightened, a muscle feathered in his cheek. Don't speak about things you don't understand, Elara. I understand perfectly. I saw the pictures. The whole world saw them. You made me a ghost in my own life, Julian. You told me to hide for my safety, but you were just keeping the seat warm for her. I took a step forward, chin high, trying to summon the courage Chloe always said I lacked. So I'm done. I'm walking out that door and you are going to let me. I moved to brush past him. I actually thought he would let me go. I thought he would sigh, relieve himself of the burden of a secret girlfriend, and go back to his glittering public life. I was wrong. The moment my shoulder brushed his arm, he moved, faster than I could react. Julian. He stepped into my personal space, forcing me backward. I stumbled, my heels catching on the Persian rug until my back hit the cold plaster of the hallway wall. The gray suitcase slipped from my numb fingers and hit the floor with a dull thud. You aren't going anywhere, he said. You don't own me. I shouted, pushing against his chest with both hands. It was like pushing against a stone wall. He didn't even flinch. Don't I? He reached out and gripped my wrist. He didn't squeeze hard enough to bruise, but his fingers were iron bands. He pinned my hand against the wall next to my head. Let go, I gasped, panic rising in my throat. I'll scream. I'll call the police. Go ahead, he challenged, his face inches from mine. I could smell the scotch on his breath, mixed with the faint matting scent of his expensive cologne. Call them. Tell them you're leaving your fiancé because of a tabloid rumor. It's not a rumor, I saw you touching her. I saw the way you looked at her. And do you think that means you can leave? His eyes darkened, shifting from exhaustion to something darker obsession. It was a look I had never seen directed at me before. You think you can just pack a bag and walk out of my life? After everything I've built? You built it for you. I cried, tears finally spilling over hot and fast. I'm just an accessory you keep in the closet until you're bored. He leaned in closer. His lips brushed the shell of my ear, sending a violent shiver down my spine. You are not an accessory, Elara, he whispered, his voice vibrating against my skin. You are mine, start to finish, and I don't share what is mine. Not with the world, and certainly not with your friend Chloe. I hate you, I sobbed, my resistance crumbling under his overwhelming proximity. He pulled back just enough to look me in the eyes. His gaze dropped to my trembling lips, then back up to my tear-filled eyes. Hate me all you want, scream at me, break the vases. But you aren't leaving this apartment. He released my wrist and stepped back, but the air around him still felt suffocating. He bent down and grabbed the handle of my suitcase. No, I lunged for it. He easily blocked me with one arm, dragging the suitcase back toward the living room. I'll be keeping this. That's my stuff. You can't just, he ignored me, walking past the entry console. He reached for the security panel on the wall. His fingers flew over the keypad. Click, whir, thud. The heavy steel deadbolts on the front door slammed into place. A red light flashed on the panel. Perimeter lockdown active. He turned to me, his expression unreadable. You want to leave? He asked softly, walking toward me until there was no space left between us, cornering me against the locked door. He tilted my chin up with his thumb, forcing me to look at him. Try again, Elara, he whispered, his eyes burning into mine. I dare you. I looked at the locked door, then back at him. The realization hit me colder than the winter wind. I wasn't his partner anymore. I was his prisoner. Don't wait up, Julian said, adjusting his cufflinks in the hallway mirror. I didn't look up from my tablet. I was sitting on the sofa, my legs tucked under me, pretending to read the news. I wasn't planning on it. He walked past me toward the door. As he moved, the air shifted. The scent hit me instantly, heavy tuberose and musk. It was distinctive. It was expensive. It was Sienna's. He smelled like her. I gripped the tablet until my fingers ached. He didn't say goodbye. The biometric lock chirped, the heavy door slammed, and silence rushed back into the penthouse. Here, child, a soft voice said. Martha placed a mug of herbal tea on the coffee table. Her hands were shaking slightly. She'd been with Julian's family for 20 years, and she had never seen him like this. I'm not thirsty, Martha. You need to keep your strength up, she insisted, hovering nearby. She looked at the closed door, then back at me, her eyes filled with a pity that made my skin crawl. He has his reasons. Elara, Mr. Julian carries burdens we don't understand. His reasons involve sleeping with an actress and locking me in this apartment. I snapped, finally looking at her. He's not a martyr, Martha. He's a jailer. It's not what it looks like, she whispered, wringing her apron. Just have patience, please. My patience ran out 3 days ago. I stood up and walked to the guest room. I couldn't stand the pity in her eyes. I needed to work. I opened my laptop. The cursor blinked on the blank page of my script software. Scene 42, int, abandoned warehouse, night Lara, VO. I used to think mercy was a virtue. Now I know it's a weakness. I typed furiously. For the last week, this script was the only place where I had power. My protagonist, originally a weeping damsel, had changed. I rewrote her dialogue. I made it sharper, crueler. She doesn't forgive him, I muttered to myself, deleting a monologue about love. She ruins him. I was so absorbed in the rhythmic clack of the keys that I didn't hear the elevator chime hours later. Julian? I called out, closing my laptop. I need to talk to you about the Wi-Fi restriction. I walked into the living room. Julian wasn't there. I could hear the shower running in the master bath, but someone was standing at the liquor cabinet. Sienna turned around, a crystal tumbler in her hand. She was wearing a trench coat over a slip dress, looking like she had just stepped off a runway. She looked at home. I froze. How did you get in here? She smiled, but it didn't reach her eyes. Julian gave me a code, obviously. Get out. She ignored me, taking a slow sip of Julian's scotch. My God, you're still here? I thought he said he handled the housekeeping situation. I am not the housekeeper, I said, my voice shaking with rage. Could have fooled me, she drawled, walking toward the sofa and running a manicured hand over the velvet. You certainly dress like the help. Sweatpants? Really? This is my home, Sienna. Is it? She laughed, a tinkling, cruel sound. Because it looks like you're just a squatter he hasn't gotten around to evicting yet. The shower water stopped, running in the distance. Sienna checked her reflection in the mirror, fixing her lipstick. Be a dear and fetch me some ice, she said, not looking at me, and maybe a lime. If you're going to insist on staying, try to be useful. I am not your servant. She turned, her eyes narrowing into slits. She stepped into my personal space, radiating that sickening floral perfume. Look at you, she sneered. No ring, no public acknowledgement. No power. If you aren't a servant, Elara, then what are you? A pet? I clenched my fists, my nails digging into my palms. Julian likes his strays, she whispered, leaning in. But eventually they all get put down. Wear the black dress, Julian commanded, not looking up from his phone. And try to stay out of the photos. I stood in the doorway of the bedroom, my arms crossed. Why make me go if you're just going to hide me? Because appearances matter, Elara. People are asking where you are. If you don't show, the rumors get worse. Rumors that you're sleeping with Sienna? He finally looked up, his eyes cold. Be ready in 10 minutes. The car ride was silent. When we arrived at the gala, the flashes of the paparazzi blinded me. Julian stepped out first, extending a hand not to me, but to the woman waiting at the entrance of the red carpet, Sienna. She was wearing a blood-red gown that clung to every curve. She took his arm, beaming at the cameras. I scrambled out of the other side of the car, keeping my head down, clutching my simple black clutch like a shield. Inside, the ballroom was suffocating. Julian, a sharp voice cut through the noise. An older woman with steel gray hair and diamonds the size of grapes approached us, Mrs. Sterling, Julian's mother. Mother? Julian nodded respectfully. Her gaze slid over him and landed on me. Her lip curled. And this one. I thought you had resolved the situation. She is my guest tonight, Mother. Guest, she scoffed. She looks like she's here to serve the hors d'oeuvres. Honestly, Julian, Sienna is waiting by the bar. Don't keep a real lady waiting. Julian didn't defend me. He just adjusted his cuff. Go find a table, Elara. Stay put. He walked away with his mother, leaving me standing alone in the middle of the room. I found a corner near a pillar, trying to disappear. Half an hour later, I saw them. Julian and Sienna laughing with a group of investors. They started walking toward my corner. I tried to step back, but I was blocked by a waiter. Sienna spotted me, her eyes lit up with malicious delight. As she passed, she stumbled fake, theatrical, and precise. Splash. I gasped as red wine soaked the front of my dress, cold and sticky. The glass shattered on the floor. "Oh dear," Sienna laughed, her voice dripping with fake sympathy. She didn't look sorry. She looked triumphant. My hand just slipped. The music seemed to stop. The conversations nearby died out. Everyone was looking at me. "You did that on purpose," I whispered, shock making my voice tremble. Sienna stepped closer, lowering her voice so only I and Julian could hear. "You really should be more careful where you stand, Elara. You're always in the way." I looked at Julian. My eyes pleaded with him, "Say something. Defend me, just once." Julian looked at my ruined dress. Then he looked at Sienna. He didn't yell. He didn't scold her. He lifted his glass and took a slow, indifferent sip of his drink. The silence stretched, snapping something deep inside my chest. It wasn't a loud break. It was a quiet final release. I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I felt the corners of my mouth twitch upward. "You're right," I said, my voice steady. I smiled at Sienna. "I won't be in the way anymore." I turned on my heel and walked out. I didn't stop until I reached the garden terrace. The night air was freezing, biting through the wet fabric of my dress. I shivered, wrapping my arms around myself. "Rough night?" I jumped, turning around. A man was sitting on a stone bench, smoking a cigarette. He wore a dark suit, no tie. "I'm fine," I said automatically. He stood up and walked into the light. Liam Blackwood, Julian's biggest rival. "You don't look fine," he said. He took a handkerchief from his pocket and held it out. "For the wine or the tears?" "Whichever comes first." "I'm not crying." I noticed most women would be hysterical. You just smiled. It was terrifying. I liked it. I took the handkerchief. "What do you want, Liam?" "I want to know why a writer with your talent is wasting her time being Julian Sterling's punching bag." I froze. "How do you know about my writing?" "I read the script you ghost wrote for him last year." The dialogue was too good for him. He tossed his cigarette on the ground and crushed it with his shoe. "I'm starting a new production division." "I don't need a ghost, Elara. I need a head writer." He pulled a business card from his pocket and slid it into my hand. "Call me when you're done playing the victim." "Here is your tie," I said, smoothing the blue silk against his chest. Julian looked down at me, a smug satisfaction in his eyes. He caught my hand and kissed the knuckles. "Blue, good choice." "It matches your eyes," I said softly, keeping my voice light. "Especially when you get what you want." He chuckled, a low, victorious sound. "I'm glad you finally stopped fighting me, Elara. The apartment has been much more peaceful this week." "I realized you were right," I lied, fixing his collar. "The world is too loud right now. I'm safer here." He relaxed his shoulders. Arrogance always has a blind spot, and Julian's was his belief that he was irresistible. Over the last 7 days, I had played the role of the obedient doll perfectly. I cooked his steaks medium rare. I ironed his shirts. I stopped asking about Sienna. I watched him lower his guard inch by inch. "Big day today," he said, checking his watch. "The merger closes at noon. I won't be back until late. I'll have dinner ready, I promised. Maybe a roast?" "Perfect." He grabbed his briefcase and paused at the door. "Stay inside. The press is still prowling downstairs. I promise. I won't take a step outside the front door." He kissed my cheek, a proprietary stamp, and left. The biometric lock chirped. Beep. Click. I waited exactly 5 minutes. "You won the dare, Julian," I whispered to the empty room. "But you lost the game." I didn't run to the bedroom to pack. Suitcases imply travel. Suitcases get you caught on cameras. Suitcases make noise. I walked to the kitchen island. I slid the diamond engagement ring off my finger, the promise ring he gave me to keep me quiet. I placed it on the marble counter next to his platinum credit card. Then I pulled my iPhone from my pocket and set it down beside the ring. "Find my location now," I muttered. I touched the small pocket of my jeans. The cold metal of a USB drive pressed against my hip, my scripts, my drafts. My intellectual property. It was the only thing of value I was taking. I grabbed a black heavy-duty trash bag I had filled earlier with actual garbage. Camouflage. I walked out of the kitchen and toward the service entrance at the back of the penthouse. I punched in the code I had watched Martha use 100 times, 1984. The door hissed open. I stepped into the service corridor and pressed the button for the freight elevator. The door slid open. My heart stopped. Kenji was standing there. He leaned against the metal wall, his massive arms crossed over his chest. He looked at the trash bag in my hand, then at my empty pockets, then at my face. "Taking out the trash, Miss Elara?" His voice rumbled, deep and flat. "Something like that," I said, my pulse hammering against my throat. It was starting to smell. He didn't move. He filled the entire doorway. Mr. Sterling gave strict orders. No one in or out without his approval. Not even for trash. Julian is busy merging empires. Kenji, he won't notice I'm gone until tonight. He will notice. Maybe I stepped closer, gripping the plastic bag until my knuckles turned white. "But you saw how he treated me at the gala. You were there." Kenji's expression didn't change, but his eyes shifted slightly. He had been the one to hand me a napkin when Sienna spilled the wine. He had seen the cruelty. "He pays me to protect him," Kenji stated. "Then protect him from a kidnapping charge," I said sharply. "Because if I stay here one more day against my will, that is exactly what this becomes." A long silence stretched between us. The hum of the elevator motor was the only sound. I held my breath, waiting for him to grab his radio, to call security, to drag me back into the golden cage. Kenji slowly uncrossed his arms. He stepped to the side, pressing his back against the wall, clearing a path to the exit. "The back alley camera has a blind spot on the left," he murmured, staring up at the ceiling light. "If one were to walk quickly," I let out a shuddering breath. "Thank you." He tipped his head slightly, his face returning to stone. "Go," I walked past him, then I ran. I didn't stop until I was 3 miles away, standing in front of a peeling green door in Queens. Liam's instructions had been specific: key under the mat. "It's a dump, but it's off the grid." I fumbled for the key and unlocked the door. The apartment smelled of stale smoke and lemon cleaner. The faucet dripped. The window looked out onto a brick wall. I locked the door behind me and slid down to the floor. "It's a dump," I laughed, the sound echoing in the empty room. I took a deep breath. It tasted like dust and mildew. It was the sweetest thing I had ever tasted. It tasted like mine. "Elara, stop pacing. You're going to burn a hole in my Persian rug." I stopped in the center of the office, turning to face the desk. "I'm not pacing, Mr. Ross. I'm strategizing." "Mr. Ross?" The veteran director who had terrified me 3 months ago laughed. He spun his tablet around to face me. "Well, stop strategizing and start celebrating." "Look at these numbers." I leaned over the mahogany desk. The graph was a sharp, vertical green line. "Is that US?" I asked. "That is the betrayal," Mr. Ross beamed, tapping the screen. "We are trending in 10 countries. The critics are calling it visceral and uncomfortably real, specifically the dialogue in episode 4. You know, the scene where the heroine burns the letters? I know the scene," I said quietly. I should. I had lived it. "It's haunting, Elara. The actress said she didn't even have to act. She just read your words and felt the rage." He took off his glasses and looked at me with newfound respect. "You have a gift. You tap into a darkness most people are afraid to touch. It's just fiction, Mr. Ross," I lied, adjusting the lapel of my white tuxedo jacket. "Just a story, if you say so." He checked his watch. "The limo is downstairs. It's premiere night. Go show them the face behind the phenomenon." I walked to the floor-to-ceiling mirror. The girl who stared back wasn't the girl who fled the penthouse in a trash bag. That girl was gone. This woman had hair cut into a sharp, asymmetrical bob that framed her jaw. She wore tailored suits, not soft dresses. She wore red lipstick, not balm. She looked like a weapon. "Ready?" Liam asked, leaning against the doorframe. He looked dashing in navy blue, but unlike Julian, his eyes were warm. "Born ready?" I said. The ride to the theater was a blur, but stepping onto the red carpet was hyper-real. 3 months ago, I had cowered from these lights. Now I bathed in them. Elara, over here." Who was the inspiration for the antagonist? A reporter shouted, thrusting a microphone over the velvet rope. I stopped, posing with a practiced coolness. "Everyone has a villain in their story," I said into the mic. "I just decided to stop letting mine win." "You look incredible," Liam whispered, his hand resting respectfully on my lower back. "You know, rumor has it Julian's stock dropped another 5 points today. Investors are spooked." "I don't care about his stock," I said, though a flicker of satisfaction warmed my chest. "I don't care about him at all." "Good, because tonight is about you." We reached the top of the stairs. I felt invincible. I felt safe. Then the atmosphere shifted. The screaming photographers went silent for a split second, then erupted into a frenzy twice as loud as before. The air grew heavy, charged with a static electricity I knew too well. "Oh my God," someone whispered. "Is that him?" I thought he was in seclusion. My heart hammered a warning rhythm against my ribs. "Don't turn around," my brain commanded. "Walk away." But my body betrayed me. I turned. The crowd parted. Julian stood at the base of the stairs. He wasn't surrounded by bodyguards. He wasn't with Sienna. He stood alone. He looked terrible and he looked magnificent. He was thinner, his cheekbones cutting sharply against his skin. His eyes were shadowed, dark circles bruising the skin beneath them as if he hadn't slept in 90 days. He radiated a terrifying, raw intensity that sucked the oxygen out of the air. He ignored the cameras flashing in his face. He ignored the reporters shouting his name. He looked up the stairs. His gaze locked onto mine with the force of a physical impact. He didn't blink, he didn't smile. He just stared, hungry and desperate, as if he had finally found water in a desert. "Julian," I breathed, the name slipping out before I could stop it. He took the first step up the stairs. The VIP section of the club was pulsing with bass, but in the corner where Julian had cornered me, the air was dead silent. "Back off, Sterling." Liam stepped between us, his hand checking the button of his suit jacket. "She doesn't want to talk to you." Julian didn't even blink. He looked over Liam's shoulder, his eyes fixed on mine with a terrifying intensity. He looked like a man who had walked through fire to get here singed, exhausted, and dangerous. "Elara," he said. His voice was rough like gravel. 5 minutes. "I'm calling security," Liam warned, taking a step forward. "It's okay, Liam," I said, placing a hand on his arm. "He's unstable, Elara. Look at him." "I know," I said, keeping my gaze on Julian. "But I can handle this. I'm not the same girl who needs hiding anymore." Liam hesitated, looking between us. "I'll be right over there." One signal and he's out. "Thank you." Liam stepped away, leaving us in a bubble of tension. Julian took a step closer, invading my space, but this time I didn't shrink back. I crossed my arms and stared him down. "You look terrible," I said flatly. "And you look different," he murmured, his eyes tracing the sharp cut of my hair. "Harder." I had to become harder. "Soft things get crushed in your world." His jaw clenched. "You think you can hide from me by working for him? For Blackwood?" "He's my enemy, Elara. You crossed a line." I laughed. It was a cold, genuine laugh. "I'm not hiding, Julian. For the first time in my life, I am living. I'm writing my name on my work. I'm walking red carpets. I'm breathing. That is something I never did with you." "You don't understand," he hissed, his hands clenching into fists at his sides. "I wasn't trying to bury you. I was trying to keep you alive. By parading Sienna around? By letting her humiliate me? By locking me in an apartment? Sienna was never my lover." The shout cracked the air between us. A few people turned to look, but Julian didn't care. He stepped closer, lowering his voice to a desperate whisper. "She wasn't my mistress, Elara. She was my executioner." I frowned. "What are you talking about?" "My mother," he said, the words coming out strained. "Mrs. Sterling isn't just a socialite. Years ago, she made mistakes. Illegal ones, embezzlement, laundering. Sienna found the ledger. She had proof that would send my mother to prison for the rest of her life." I stared at him, stunned. "Blackmail?" "She demanded to be the face of the company. She demanded the engagement. She wanted the status. And she told me that if I didn't play the part of the devoted fiancé, she would leak the documents. So you just went along with it?" "I had to buy time to find the evidence and destroy it." He insisted, his eyes pleading with me to understand. "And then she threatened you?" "She told me if I didn't get rid of you, she'd plant the evidence on you instead. She'd ruin you. So you treated me like trash to save me?" I had to make her believe I didn't care. He stepped closer, reaching for my hand but stopping inches away. "The dare locking you in. It wasn't control, Elara, it was panic. If you had left that apartment, Sienna's people would have found you. I kept you there because it was the only place I could guarantee you were safe." The revelation hung between us. It made sense. The coldness, the sudden shifts in mood, the desperation. But as I looked at him, I didn't feel relief. I felt a cold, hard knot in my stomach. "You lied to me for months," I said quietly, "to protect you. No, I shook my head slowly. You assumed I was too weak to handle the truth. You made decisions for me. You stripped me of my agency and my dignity because you thought you knew better. I did it because I love you. He whispered, his voice breaking. I looked him dead in the eye. Then your love is toxic, Julian, and your protection? It felt a lot like abuse. He recoiled as if I had slapped him. The color drained from his face. Elara. Go home, Julian, I said, turning my back on him. Fix your mother's mess. But don't you dare try to fix me. I walked away, my heels clicking on the floor, leaving him standing alone in the shadows of his own making. They're burning your posters outside the studio, Liam said, his face pale as he scrolled through his phone. She played this perfectly. She released original drafts with timestamps that predate yours. They're forged, I said calmly, adjusting the microphone clip to my lapel. The public doesn't know that, Liam snapped, pacing the small green room. #Elara thief has 2 million uses. She's claiming you were her assistant who stole her laptop. My investors are panicking. They want to pull the show. Let them panic. It will make the ratings for this interview even higher. Elara, are you listening to me? Sienna is America's sweetheart. You're the unknown writer. In the court of public opinion, you are already dead. I stood up and smoothed my skirt. Then it's a good thing I brought an autopsy report. A production assistant poked her head in. We're live in 30 seconds. I walked onto the set. The studio lights were blinding. Diane, the host, offered me a tight, skeptical smile. She didn't think I was innocent. She thought I was great TV. Welcome back, Diane said to the camera. We're sitting down with Elara, the creator of the hit show The Betrayal, or perhaps the thief of it. Elara, Sienna Vane called you a parasite this morning. How do you respond? I think Sienna is projecting, I said, my voice steady. But I didn't come here to trade insults. I came to trade facts. She has timestamps, Diane pressed. She has screenshots, I corrected. I have the metadata. I handed a thick folder to Diane. This proves the file creation dates on my personal drive, 3 years before I ever met Julian Sterling. But that's not the real story, is it? Diane frowned, opening the folder. What is this? Sienna claims I was her assistant. She claims she comes from the Vane shipping dynasty. But if you look at the second page, you'll see a birth certificate for a Sarah Vance from Ohio. The studio audience gasped. I lived in the same house as her, I continued, looking directly into the camera lens. I heard the phone call she thought the maid wouldn't understand. I heard the collection agencies calling. I saw the notices for unpaid credit cards. Are you saying? Diane's eyes widened. I'm saying she isn't an heiress, I said clearly. She's a fraud. She's been funding her lifestyle on credit and blackmailing powerful men to cover her tracks. She didn't write that script, Diane. She can't even pay her ghostwriters. We have a caller, the producer's voice boomed over the speakers. It's Sienna Vane. Put her through, Diane said, leaning forward. You lying little rat. Sienna's voice shrieked over the studio speakers. It wasn't the polished, sultry voice of the actress. It was shrill and hysterical. I will sue you for everything you have. I will bury you. With what money, Sienna? I asked coldly. The cards that were declined at the pier last week? Or the money you extorted from the Sterling family to keep their secrets? Shut up, you were supposed to be nothing. Sienna screamed, her composure shattering completely. I owned you. You were just a prop. I'm not a prop, I said, my voice cutting through her hysteria like a blade. I'm the writer. And I just wrote you out of the script. I signaled the producer to cut the line. The silence in the studio was absolute. Then Diane looked at me with genuine awe. Well, Diane breathed. I think that clears things up. The thunder outside was rattling the window panes of my queen's apartment, but the knocking on the door was louder. Who is it? I called out, tightening the belt of my robe. It's me. The voice was barely recognizable. It wasn't the baritone of the CEO who commanded rooms. It was a rasp, a whisper. I unlocked the deadbolt and pulled the door open. The storm raged in the hallway, or maybe just around the man standing there, Julian. He wasn't wearing a coat. His white shirt was soaked through, clinging to his skin, translucent and cold. His hair was plastered to his forehead. He smelled of rain and cheap whiskey. You're drunk, I said, blocking the entrance. Go home, Julian. I don't have a home. He slurred slightly, leaning against the doorframe for support. Not anymore. I'm not doing this. I'm calling a cab. Mother had a stroke, he blurted out. I froze, my hand hovering over my phone. Mrs. Sterling? The scandal, he laughed, a broken, jagged sound. The news about Sienna. The fraud, the blackmail. It was too much for her heart. She's in the ICU, the doctors say. They say she might not wake up. Julian, I'm so sorry. And the board, he continued, his eyes unfocused, staring past me into the warmth of my apartment. They're voting me out tomorrow. Negligence, instability. I spent 6 months chasing you instead of running the empire. He took a step forward, his legs buckling. He didn't catch himself. He fell to his knees on my welcome mat, his head bowing low, water dripping from his nose onto the floor. I lost everything, he whispered into the carpet. I tried to save everyone, I tried to control everything, and I lost it all. Most importantly, I lost you. Seeing the King of New York on his knees should have felt like victory. It should have been the moment I gloated. But as I looked down at his shaking shoulders, I didn't feel triumph. I felt a sharp, twisting ache in my chest. Get up, I said softly. I can't. Get up, Julian. You're soaking my floor. I reached down and took his arm. He was heavy, dead weight, but he let me pull him up. I guided him to the small second-hand sofa. Stay, I ordered. I went to the kitchen. My hands trembled as I scooped coffee grounds. Why are you doing this? I asked myself. He locked you up. Because he's human, the new Elara answered. And because you aren't cruel. I returned with a steaming mug. Drink black, no sugar. He took it with shaking hands. Why are you helping me? Because I'm not you, I said simply, sitting in the armchair opposite him. We sat in silence for a long time, the rain drumming against the roof. The alcohol slowly faded from his eyes, replaced by a stark, terrifying clarity. I love you, he said. It wasn't a demand. It was a confession. I never stopped. I know, I admitted, looking at the steam rising from my own cup. And I love you, Julian. I think part of me always will. Hope flickered in his eyes. He leaned forward. Then come back. Help me fix this. We can. No. The word hung in the air, heavy and final. Elara? I love you, I repeated, meeting his gaze steadily. But I love the woman I became without you more. She is strong. She is independent. And she doesn't need to be saved or protected. I can change, he pleaded. I can be what you need. You don't even know who you are without your title, Julian. You're broken. I stood up and walked to the window, watching the dawn begin to break over the city skyline. You need to fix your own life. You need to be with your mother. You need to save your company or let it burn and build something honest. And if I do, he asked, his voice quiet, if I fix it? I turned back to him. Fix yourself first, I said. Then and only then you can ask me for coffee, but not as a savior. Just as a man. He stared at me for a long moment, then slowly nodded. He stood up, leaving the untouched coffee on the table. I understand, he said. He walked to the door, pausing with his hand on the knob. He didn't look back. He just walked out into the rain, leaving me alone with the sunrise. The echo of my heels on the concrete floor was the only sound in the underground parking garage. It was late. The studio was empty. I reached into my bag, fishing for my keys. Happy now? The voice echoed from behind a concrete pillar. I froze, my hand still deep in my purse. I knew that voice, but it sounded wrong, ragged, broken. Sienna? I asked, turning slowly. She stepped out of the shadows. She wasn't the glamorous woman in the red dress anymore. Her hair was matted, her eyes wild and bloodshot. She wore a stained hoodie, shivering despite the humidity. And in her right hand, shaking violently, was a small black pistol. You stole my life, she rasped. Sienna, put the gun down, I said, keeping my voice level. I remembered the psychology tricks from my script research. Keep them talking. Don't escalate. You took the fame. She screamed, stepping closer. The gun wavered, pointing at my chest. You took the money. You took the fans. And you took him? I didn't take anything, I said softly, holding my empty hands up. You made choices, Sienna, but this? This isn't a choice you want to make. You can walk away. Walk away? She laughed, a hysterical sobbing sound. To where? I have nothing. They confiscated my passport. They froze my accounts. I'm sleeping in a subway station because of you. We can call someone, I offered, taking a micro step forward. You need help. You're tired. I don't want help, she shrieked. I want you to hurt. I want you to bleed like I'm bleeding. She raised the gun higher, studying her aim. Her eyes went dead. I saw the muscle in her finger tighten on the trigger. I stopped breathing. There was nowhere to run. Sienna, no. A shout tore through the silence. Julian. He sprinted from the stairwell door 20 feet away. He must have been waiting for me, watching me. Don't do it. Julian roared, running toward us. Sienna's eyes snapped to him. You, she hissed. You let her ruin me. Look at me, Sienna. Julian shouted, ignoring his own safety, closing the distance between us. It's over. Put it down. It's over when I say it's over. She swung the gun back toward me. I saw the flash before I heard the sound. Bang. The noise was deafening in the enclosed space. I flinched, waiting for the burning pain, waiting for the end. But I didn't feel it. A heavy weight slammed into me, knocking me backward onto the cold concrete. Julian. He had thrown himself in front of me a split second before the trigger pulled. He landed on top of me, his body shuddering violently. Julian? I gasped, pushing against his chest. He rolled off me, groaning. His hand was pressed to his stomach. Dark, thick blood was already seeping through his fingers, staining his white shirt crimson. No, I whispered, scrambling to my knees. No, no, no. Sienna stood frozen, the gun dropping from her hand. She looked at Julian, then at her hands, as if waking from a trance. I didn't mean, she stammered. Sirens wailed in the distance, getting louder by the second. Someone had heard the shot. Sienna turned and ran toward the exit, stumbling into the night, defeated. I didn't watch her go. My world had narrowed down to the man bleeding on the floor. Julian, stay with me, I begged, pressing my hands over his wound. The blood was so warm. There was so much of it. Help is coming. Just breathe. His face was ashen, his lips turning blue. He looked up at me, his eyes losing focus. He reached up with a bloody hand, his fingers brushing my cheek, leaving a smear of red on my skin. He coughed, a wet, rattling sound. But then he smiled. It was a weak, peaceful smile. Why? I sobbed, tears dripping onto his face. Why did you do that? I told you, he whispered, his voice barely a breath against the wailing sirens. Don't speak, I cried. He gripped my hand, his strength fading. I told you, he repeated, his eyes drifting shut. I never let you go. The hospital garden smelled of blooming jasmine and antiseptic. I found Julian sitting on a stone bench near the fountain, a cane resting against his knee. He wasn't wearing a suit. He wore a soft gray sweater and jeans. He looked human. You're late, he said, shielding his eyes from the sun to look up at me. I'm busy, I replied, sitting on the bench opposite him, keeping a polite distance. My show got renewed for season 2. I have meetings. I heard, he smiled. It wasn't the shark-like grin of the CEO. It was tired, genuine, and touched his eyes. I watched the finale from my bed. It was brilliant, Elara. It was honest, I corrected. How are the ribs? Healing, slower than I'd like. He tapped the cane. The doctors say I'm lucky to be alive. You are, I said sharply. You were stupid, Julian, jumping in front of a gun? It was the only way to stop her. He looked down at his hands. I resigned this morning, I paused. From the company? From everything, the board accepted it. I'm done being the king, Elara. The crown was too heavy. I just want to be a man. And what does this man want? He looked at me. His gaze was intense, but the possessive edge was gone. The darkness that used to terrify me had been replaced by a quiet vulnerability. I remember the last thing I said to you before I locked that door, he said softly. I dared you to try again. I dared you to leave. I remember, I said, my voice cool. I was wrong, he admitted. He reached out, his hand hovering in the space between us, waiting for permission. I don't want to dare you anymore. I don't want to command you. He took a deep breath, his fingers trembling slightly. Will you try again? He asked softly. Not a dare. A request. I looked at him. I looked at the man who had broken me into pieces and the man who had taken a bullet to save those pieces. I saw the scars on his neck and the hope in his eyes. I didn't pull him up. I didn't fall into his arms weeping. I stood up, walked over to his bench, and sat next to him. I took his hand. His grip was firm, but he didn't pull. He held on as if I were the anchor keeping him from drifting away. We try again, I said firmly. His shoulders sagged with relief. Elara, but on my terms, I interrupted, squeezing his hand hard enough to make him look at me. No secrets, no shadows. No protecting me from the truth. Agreed, he whispered. And I leaned in, my face inches from his, ensuring he saw the fire in my eyes. If you ever try to control me again, if you ever lock a door or hide me away, I won't just leave, Julian. I brushed my thumb over his knuckles. I will destroy you. He didn't flinch. He smiled, and for the first time it looked like freedom. Deal? He breathed. He leaned in, and I met him halfway. The kiss wasn't desperate or angry. It was slow. It was equal. It tasted like a promise. I wasn't his prisoner anymore. I was his partner. And finally, that was enough.